Coming up next is our latest edition of Test of Time, where we go back to a golden year in rock and roll and look at the entire top 40 countdown and tell you what the real top songs are decades later, the true top 10. We have some of the biggest rock bands ever here to help us count these down. Special guests, including a legendary rock frontman who was struggling to get the vocal recorded, really tough vocal at a session. And then the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen walked into the studio and sat down to watch him. It inspired a vocal that went scorchers, one of the best ever. And then he rushed out of the vocal booth to track this girl down. And he never saw her again. She just disappeared. Who was this mystery woman? We also have the rock song that a young guitarist played a solo in the first 40 seconds of the song. And the label bosses said, no way. They tried to erase it, but the guitarist fought him. He said tough crap and it stayed in. Now, the song didn't do as well as the band thought it would, but then 40 plus years later, it became the biggest song of all time. Then there's the song that a rock frontman accidentally sang the wrong lyrics to, when he was recording the song. This mistake made the song one of the biggest of the 80s. Plus the badass opening bass line that defined the 80s, where everyone and their dog ripped it off. It's all in. We're all in on this next one coming up. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock always here to celebrate the greatest songs and the greatest artists of all time. Man, we got a special one for you today. Make sure to subscribe below the first thing you do so you always know when our stuff comes out. We have some amazing interviews coming out this year, and we've got a really great countdown for you here. Let's see if you can guess the year by a couple of clues I've got for you. In movie theaters, Rocky Balboa was chasing that Eye of the Tiger and taking on Clubber Lang for the third installment of Rocky 3, and one of my favorite. Actually, it's probably my favorite. E.T. the Extraterrestrial was ready to phone home, and you could catch Harrison Ford starring in the Ridley Scott film Blade Runner, a classic.
United Artists and Chartoff Winkler proudly present Rocky 3.
And then on television, on the boob tube, you could watch the debuts of Late Night with David Letterman, favorite of mine, Knight Rider. There was also Cheers. Time magazine named the personal computer the machine of the year instead of the man of the year, and the first commercial CDs and CD players were released in Japan. Do you know the year? Talking about a great one, 1982. So the question is, where were you in 82? Let me know in the comments below. For this show, we're revisiting this very same week from 1982. We're going to find out which top 40 hits from the Billboard Hot 100 have truly stood the test of time and become the biggest songs from that era. We're going to count them down in honor of my hero, Casey Kasem. You remember it. You listen to it every week. I did too. A lot of you did. All right, we're going to play a game, though. I'm going to play you 3 seconds of the big songs on our countdown, and then I want you to try to guess what the top songs are decades later. Can you do it? We're going to figure out which is the Test of Time winner. All right, I've totaled up the streaming numbers from platforms like Spotify and YouTube and radio and everything. And we're going to tell you how they ranked back in 82 and how they are now. All right, kicking off the countdown in at number 10 with 180 million streams. I've got one of the biggest hits of the 80s. It's Physical by Olivia Newton-John. So this week in 1982, Olivia was rocking it at number 1, part of her 10 consecutive week run at the top of the Billboard Hot 100. Of course, the American Top 40 as well. Physical was like an unstoppable freight train back then, barreling down the tracks. Everyone else just had to get out of the way. Olivia was, of course, no stranger to chart success at this point. She had a killer run through the 70s, included number 1 hits like Honestly Love You, and of course, starring opposite John Travolta in Grease, had a lot of hits there. By the way, the soundtrack for Grease gave her 3 top 5 hits, including the number 1 smasher, The One That I Want. ONJ was on a tear and quickly becoming a global superstar, and now it's time to take on the 80s, and of course, cue Physical, written by Steve Kipner and Terry Shattuck. The song was originally intended for Rod Stewart, if you can believe that. It was also passed on by Tina Turner, I believe. According to Kipner, the idea was to write a song about the physical side of love and bypass the emotional side of things. When Olivia's manager, Roger Davies, played it for her, she knew immediately that it was going to be a big hit. She knew it was special. She said, I just wasn't in the mood for tender ballads anymore. I wanted peppy stuff because that's how I was feeling. It was the 80s. I knew it was a very catchy song. However, she really didn't think it through all the way because after recording it, panic set in when she realized what the lyrics were talking about. She later admitted she completely freaked out. Olivia actually called her manager and told him, kill the song. We have to stop it because it just goes too far. It's too racy for, her image, her squeaky clean image. But he told her, it's already on the charts, doll. It's doing really well and we're not going to stop it. But Olivia came up with a brilliant plan to dial it back just a little bit. The music video, of course, featured her in workout gear at the gym. That strategy was really simple. Make people think the song was about exercise rather than sex, right? Of course, the song was absolutely about sex, but the plan worked. Physical received massive airplay and tapped into the fitness craze of the moment, so much so that she really became the spearhead of it, the song. When Olivia's 11th studio album, Physical, hit shelves in October of 81, the title track exploded, becoming the longest reigning chart topper of the entire 80s.
Let's get into physical, let me body talk.
Olivia would say about it, I'm so proud of this record. Not only allowed me to try new things musically, but it became a part of pop culture history. All these years later, it's at number 10. It's interesting. Next up at number 9, I got a great duet, Stevie Nicks and Don Henley with Leather and Lace. Hoping that this one stays up because Don. This week of the American Top 40, the duet came in at number 7 on the countdown, which is one spot off from its peak position at number 6. Since then, Leather and Lace has garnered over 200 million streams.
Give to me your leather, take from me.
So Leather and Lace was the second single and the second duet to be released from the Stevie Nicks solo album Belladonna. The other single, of course, that preceded it was her duet with Tom Petty, Stop Dragging My Heart Around.
Stop dragging my heart around.
How do you have that many great duets from one album? Well, as far as Leather and Lace goes, it all started when Waylon Jennings called Stevie out of the blue and asked her to write a song called Leather and Lace. He actually gave her the title. Now, this was new territory for Stevie Nicks. She'd never written a song for somebody else, especially not that was just handed to her. But she took on this challenge. I mean, it was Waylon Jennings, right? Now, after finishing the chorus, she sent it to Waylon. And he called back and said, hey, finish this song. This is great. At the time, Stevie was dating Don Henley, and she'd play her work in progress for him. But his feedback was brutal. He said, that's terrible. Start over. And Stevie would go back to the drawing board, and eventually Don said, all right, it's acceptable. They recorded a demo of it together, and that demo was so close to what will become the final version that a lot of people can't even tell the difference. It really was the demo. Stevie played guitar, and they sang it exactly as you hear it on the record.
Your leather, take from me my lace.
Song was written for a man and a woman in the music business trying to work out their problems together, and it was for Waylon and his wife, Jessie Coulter. Though Stevie didn't really know them that well, their relationship inspired the song's exploration of two strong spirits finding balance within each other, especially in the business. Now, when Stevie had finished the song, she reconnected with Waylon. But by then, he and his wife were going through a difficult separation, and he told Stevie she should just keep the song for herself. It was a little too personal for the moment. When it came time to record Belladonna, Stevie knew she couldn't do the song without Don Henley. She called him up and she said, Don, I can't do this song without you. If Waylon doesn't do it, you don't do it. It's just not going to get done. I'm going to throw it in the trash. I wrote this song for a man and a woman. And so the spirit, their spirit was in it. That's what she said. Don came down to the studio, and this was when Stevie was working on another track. He must have been pleased because what he heard, he agreed to do it. He agreed to sing on it, even though he had ripped it before. And Stevie would say about Don, he's a hard one to get to, even for me. He wouldn't have put his voice on the record if he didn't think it was up to his standards. Actually, it's a song I sing karaoke with my own wife.
Forever, face to face.
All right, coming in at number 8, I've got Loverboy with Working for the Weekend, totaling 270 million streams.
Everybody's working for the weekend.
Now, this one didn't go very high on the charts. It went to number 29, but it's only grown in popularity ever since then. Working for the Weekend, of course, written by Loverboy guitarist Paul Dean, drummer Matt Frenette, and lead singer Mike Reno. Started one beautiful Wednesday morning when Paul Dean was walking near his place in Kitsilano, beachy neighborhood in Vancouver. So this area was usually packed with people, but that day, it was completely deserted. Everyone was at work. Now, as a musician, Paul was out looking for inspiration while the rest of the world was grinding through their 9 to 5. And he thought to himself, where is everybody? Well, I guess they're all waiting for the weekend. That was the moment that sparked the song. Now, when Paul asked Mike Reno to help him finish the song, everything changed. Mike would explain, and I quote, he had this line, everybody's just waiting for the weekend. And I started playing around with it. And as soon as it came up, I sang it, but I accidentally sang the wrong words. I sang everybody's working for the weekend. It was a mistake, but it was brilliant. As soon as he sang it, the band stopped everything and they went, wow, that's a lot better. That's it. That's the title of the song. The twist, the mistake, it made all the difference. Mike saw it from a different angle, though. For Paul, people were waiting for the weekend, but for Mike, they were working for it. Grinding their way through the week, hoping for some weekend relief. I know what it feels like, and you do too. That subtle shift is what made the song the hit. Here's some more about working for the weekend from Mike Reno. Was that something that just came out of you in the studio at that moment?
Absolutely. You close your eyes and you're just going for it. And that's where a lot of the stuff comes from. A lot of lyrics come from that way too. I remember when we were writing songs and we were singing in the microphone, I'd be going like, "Samthor said a bit of taco, hey." He goes, "Did you just say something take a bit of hacker, hey?" And I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's cool." I says, "It's nothing. I just was sensed, singing along." And I think a lot of songs are written like that. Then you fill them in with real words.
This message is sponsored by Raycon. So I want to take a moment and talk about my new favorite earbuds from Raycon. Now that the holidays are over, it's the perfect time to upgrade your gear for the new year. If you're getting back into a fitness routine or you're on the go like me, audio that actually works while you're on the move is a must. Now, I've been using Raycon's Essential Open earbuds. I got to tell you, they're a game changer for active people. They don't block out everything like traditional earbuds, so I can still hear what's going on around me while I'm on the go, running errands or if I'm working outside. I've been using them every day over my other earbuds because I can still hear what's going on without sacrificing sound quality. Music and podcasts stay clear without losing awareness, which is huge for safety and focus. They also have multi-point connection, so you can actually switch between multiple devices without hassle. Right now, Raycon is ringing in the new year with a sale, so it's the perfect time to grab them. They're reasonably priced, and they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. The Essential Open Earbuds are here to help you crush your New Year's goal. Go to buyraycon.com/professorofrockopen to get 20% off site-wide. Thanks, Raycon, for sponsoring. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/professorofrockopen to get 20% off. All right, coming in at number 7, I got Daryl Hall and John Oates with a total classic. I Can't Go For That, No Can Do. Now, this one peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, but this week, back in 1982, was at number 4. The song currently has almost 400 million streams and climbing. I Can't Go For That. It actually started completely by accident at the end of a long recording day. The band was getting ready to head home, and it left just Daryl, John, and the engineer in the studio. And Daryl said, and I quote, "I was sitting at this little Korg organ, and I started playing along with the Korg rhythm, and I yell, 'Turn the tape on, man,' because everybody was packing their guitars up, and they were leaving." Daryl recorded himself playing along with the drum machine right then and there. He started playing this hypnotic bass line with his left hand, and then he's like, "John, grab your guitar." That rough take became the foundation of the song. After Charlie DeChant laid down a sax solo, they added some synths and some backing vocal, and that was pretty much it. The bass line, oh man, this thing is so badass. Everybody and their dog has ripped this off, including Michael Jackson, who freely admitted this to Daryl and John at a concert years later, that he ripped it off for Billie Jean. Now, at first, Daryl was just singing gibberish over the track. Later, he turned those improvisations into the lyrics we all know. And those lyrics have some bite to them, serious bite. It sounds like a relationship song, but Daryl's explained it's actually about the music industry and its manipulations. He said, "That's what spurred me on to write the lyric. It was a frustration song." John added more depth to the thing. saying people think for themselves, do what they believe. They shouldn't act or do things just because other people do or because the government says to do it. People have to be able to assess each situation based on their own beliefs and not just follow along. Here's a little bit more of what Daryl told me about the song.
We were doing the We Are the World, and I was in the, I don't know, I was standing there by the side, just in between things, and everybody was talking to everybody else, and Michael said, I hope you don't mind. He says, I hope you don't mind. I stole No Can Do to write Billie Jean. I said, well, I don't mind at all, number one. And number two, it doesn't sound anything like No Can Do. So cool, man, go for it. I think he was just inspired by it. You know, he was too good to copy something, you know, he had more brains than that. But, I think that's what it was. That's what he was trying to say was the inspiration, you know.
He and his brothers had come to see us. I believe it was at the Universal Amphitheater in L.A., one of our shows, and they came to see us, and they came backstage. We were hanging out, and we're talking, and I remember him saying, he said, "Oh, I like to dance. I like to dance to. I can't go for that in my bedroom mirror." And I was like, "Cool." I said, "Okay, good." And then, of course, if you listen to Billie Jean, it's not a complete copy.
Sure.
He just got the feel basically. It's a compliment, I think, that an artist of his caliber would like that song so much that he wanted to use that style of groove.
All right, made it to the number 6 position on the survey, and here we got the Jay Giles Band with Centerfold. What a classic. Remember how big this one was? Now, in this week in January of 82, it was at number 8, but Centerfold was a huge number 1 hit. 6 weeks at number 1. It's done about 500 million streams since. After 14 years of grinding it out on the road, the Jay Giles Band finally found their overnight success, which was Centerfold. The track appeared on their 10th studio album, Freeze Frame. It was released on October 26, 1981. It's produced by keyboardist Seth Justman. Of course, it went to number 1 on the Billboard album charts as well, spending 4 weeks at the top and a total of 70 weeks on the chart, their biggest record. Freeze Frame offered up a sleek new sound. Still good time rock and roll at its core, but with a glossy sheen, those synth flourishes, and big pop hooks. Vocalist Peter Wolf noted the cultural shift that was happening at the time, saying there was a rediscovery. I mean, people were hungry for rock and roll bands. Clubs that had been disco started getting back into rock and roll. Written by Justman, Centerfold fully embraced a synth-driven approach reminiscent of the Cars and other early new wave rockers. Put a little new wave in there. This wasn't the band jumping on a bandwagon, though. Justman insisted they wanted to explore synthesizers much earlier, but simply couldn't afford the equipment back then. They were pretty expensive. The band had been trapped in a record company debt cycle for years. It wasn't until the early 80s that they were finally able to break free from that. But of course, beyond the sound, Centerfold turned heads for its edgy subject matter. The narrator sings about a girl he had a high school crush on, but was too shy to approach in that moment. And then years later, he discovers his sweet, innocent homeroom angel. She's become Centerfold in a naughty magazine. And his world is rocked. He's really conflicted. He's not sure how to feel about this new version of an old fantasy. Depending on the story you believe, it's actually a true story. Now, the song flirts with risque territory, but because the band kept it light and playful, it was okay. The music video, directed by Seth's brother, Paul Justman, matched that campy energy perfectly, featuring the band in a classroom surrounded by dancers in lingerie. And Centerfold entered the Hot 100 at number 70 on November 7, 1981. 13 weeks later, it hit number 1. Peter Wolf had it right. He said, if you just hang around and hang around, somehow your number's bound to come up. No truer words are ever spoken. All right, halfway through the countdown at number 5, I got The Police with Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic, which climbed to number 3 back in the day. It was their highest charting hit on the Billboard Hot 100 until 1983, when Every Breath You Take went to number 1 for 8 weeks.
Every breath you take.
So Sting actually wrote this one back in the fall of 76, before the Police even formed. At the time he recorded the demo by himself, it was originally an acoustic ballad with bass guitar, or African drums, and a bossa nova vibe there.
Every little thing she does is magic.
And when Sting tried to convince drummer Stuart Copeland and guitarist Andy Summers to record it for the band, they shut him down immediately. They just thought it was too soft for a band trying to earn their cred with the London punk scene. So the song just sat on the shelf through 3 albums. Sting also had to wait a long time for the girl that he wrote the song about. He wrote the song for a woman he was in love with named Trudy Styler. It would be years before he would reveal those feelings and over a decade until he would actually marry her.
1,000 times a day, but ask her if she'll marry me.
So fast forward to 1981, the Police had transcended punk and new wave and were taking over the world with huge hits, but tensions were rising within the band. Now Sting, increasingly frustrated with his bandmates' contributions, started bringing in demos. But they weren't really demos. They were essentially finished tracks. And this violated an unspoken agreement the three had made to work songs out collectively between the three of them. Now, when he presented to Copeland and Summers, they were still reluctant. Andy and Stewart spent days trying to policify the song, fast, slow reggae, punk, bossa nova. Nothing worked. According to Copeland, he said, to the extent that we did it different from the demo was the extent to which it didn't sound like a hit anymore. Now, frustrated but stubborn, they didn't want to give Sting the satisfaction of using his own arrangement. Finally, after 5 days of failure, though, Copeland sat down at the kit while Sting stood over him, waving through the changes. Still seething, Stewart nailed it in just one take, following the demo exactly. And he did the same on guitar. Said Copeland, we just faced the music. We bit the bullet and used Sting's arrangement. Damn it. All right, we got a special one at number 4 on our Timeless Countdown. It's Waiting for a Girl Like You by Foreigner. Oh, I love this song so much, so atmospheric. Now, this one peaked at number 2 on the AT40 back in 1982, and it held the number 2 position for an all-time record 10 weeks, and it never got to number 1 because it was behind Olivia Newton-John's Physical for 9 of those weeks. But decades later, it gets its revenge with a higher ranking than Physical. Today, it's got almost 700 million streams. Using it on Stranger Things helped with that. This is one of Foreigner's best, in my opinion. Co-written by Lou Gramm and Mick Jones, Waiting for a Girl Like You received a crucial contribution from a 19-year-old no-name kid named Thomas Dolby at the time. He would create the song's unforgettable intro. Now, at the time, Dolby had never been near a professional studio, if you can believe it. Now, he was in Europe distributing demos to record companies with zero success. Things had gotten so bad that he had to flee to London because an angry landlord was chasing him down. So he left for Paris, where he played Bob Dylan songs for Japanese tourists in the metro just to survive. Bob Dylan covers, he was doing it. But then a friend from London tracked him down with surprising news. Mick Jones was trying to reach him. Now, Thomas Dolby assumed it was Mick Jones from The Clash, so he was surprised to hear Foreigner's Mick Jones was on the other end of the line when he called the number. So Mick Jones was in New York, and he needed help with keyboards for a song called Waiting for a Girl Like You. The only reason they even knew about Thomas Dolby was because one of his demo tapes had found its way to producer Mutt Lange. Thomas flew to New York and discovered the band was under serious pressure to finish the album. They were on a deadline, and of course, they had Mutt Lange there. Foreigner worked during the day, and Thomas came in at night with an extra engineer to tackle the synth parts. They wanted something really atmospheric for the intro. So, Thomas Dolby grabbed a Mini Moog synthesizer, and he came up with the idea to manipulate the faders to create an ambient, otherworldly sound, and did he ever. Now, he had no clue if they'd like it, but the next morning when the band came back, played it for them, and there was just silence. Nobody said anything at first. And Mick and Mutt both smiled, and they went, yeah, that's the one. They gave him the green light. It would be Thomas Dolby's breakthrough moment. This 19-year-old kid on the run from his landlord, and he'd compose a critical piece of what would become Foreigner's one of their greatest hits. Actually, the cool story behind Waiting for a Girl Like You is about Lou Gramm recording the vocal. He was recording that haunting vocal. Oh, so good. And he was struggling to nail it. And then the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen walked in when he was in the vocal booth struggling, and it totally inspired his performance. In fact, let's break and have Lou tell that story. He's got a better version.
This very attractive young woman in a winter coat and almost like a Russian Kosov hat, came walking down the steps and took her coat and her hat off and sat in the recording studios in front of the board. There's always a sofa so people could sit and listen while there was the recording going on. And she came right in and took her coat and her hat off and sat down, not smiling, not expressionless, but you know, she was listening intently. And as soon as we were done, I took the headphones off and ran for the door, and she was gone. And I ran out the door and looked around to see if I could see her walking down the hallway, and there was no one there. But Mutt and Mick certainly saw it. I saw it. It made me emote just a little bit more when I was singing. And they did not see her, which I'm not sure how they couldn't have seen her, but it made me think afterwards that they may have, knowing Mick and Mutt's sense of humor, they may have hired somebody to come in and do exactly what she did, just to get my heart pumping a little faster, you know?
Yeah.
But when I said, "Did you know who that was?" They looked at each other and go, "What? Who was?" You know? And I thought to myself, "Oh yeah, right." You know? And then they said, "What are you talking about?" And I explained to them, and they said, "Didn't see any of that."
He never saw her again. She's never been found. Who do you think it was? Tell me in the comments. Oh man, the song at number 3, so good. Earth, Wind & Fire with Let's Groove, totaling 1.4 billion streams. This one nailed the trifecta. Not only did it come in at number 3 on this countdown, but for this week in January of 82, it was also sitting at number 3, and it peaked at number 3, so 3's all around. Coming into the early 80s, you know, disco was quickly falling out of fashion, and Earth, Wind & Fire, known for their 70s dance floor juggernauts, were at risk of becoming casualties of the disco demolition themselves. Now, EWF had scored 4 straight top 10 hits at, close out the 70s. It had Got to Get You Into My Life, September, Boogie Wonderland, and After the Love Is Gone. All great songs. But with disco going down the tubes, coming into 1980, they took a big commercial step back with their album Faces. It failed to score a top 40 hit in 4 chances. They released 4 singles, none reached it. But 1981's LP Raise, that would be a different story, thanks to its massive lead-off single, Let's Groove. It was the last song to be recorded for the album, but Maurice White said, "The minute I heard the demo of Let's Groove, I knew it had massive potential. It was just a track, but the bass line and chords were so locked together that it grooved. I immediately heard various hooks." Philip Bailey put it this way: "It was a catchy duet I cut with Maurice, whose voice was heavily bathed in synthesized vocoder effects." But it was a huge risk, like I said, because disco was done. Just ask the Bee Gees. But this is Earth, Wind & Fire, and the groove in their disco was too powerful to deny. So in the process, Let's Groove became the bridge between 70s disco and 80s synth funk, kicking off with that robotic vocoder intro and driven by a heavy minimoog bass line. Oh, it's such a grand song. Song has this vibrant East meets West energy with a punchy horn section and shimmering rhythm guitars that lock into that groove. The production, of course, anchored by the vocal contrast between Maurice White's smooth baritone and Philip Bailey's soaring falsetto, creating an atmosphere that feels both futuristic and timelessly soulful. Not surprisingly, Let's Groove became a huge cross-format smash, and did this all around the world. Became the longest-running #1 R&B record up to that point in history. Also in June of 81, BET, the Black Entertainment Television cable channel, premiered its first entertainment video series. It's called Video Soul, and Let's Groove was the first piece they played on the air. Let's Groove would be Earth, Wind & Fire's final top 10, though. But what a way to go out on the pop charts. Of course, the band would continue to have success on the US R&B charts with 9 more top 20 hits into the 90s. But man, there's just something about Let's Groove. Coming in at number 2, I've got the tag team efforts of David Bowie with Queen with Under Pressure, turning in 2.5 billion streams and counting. Can you guess what this thing peaked at? Number 29. Yeah, it didn't make an impact at all. Nobody really knew this song. Can you believe that? It just blows my mind that it wasn't so much bigger. So in 1981, after more than 150 emotionally draining appearances on Broadway as the Elephant Man, David Bowie returned to his home in Switzerland to take a break from public life. But that idea didn't last very long. In July of 81, Bowie dropped by Mountain Recording Studios in Montreux, Switzerland to record Cat People, Putting Out Fire. He did this with producer Georgia Moroder. Queen happened to be there working on their next album. Now, when David Bowie popped in to say hello, the 5 musicians, they started jamming together. Oh man, it would have been cool to be there and see that. They initially worked on a Queen track that was called Cool Cat, but David Bowie wasn't happy with how that one turned out. The song eventually made it onto Queen's album Hot Space, though by then Bowie had requested his vocals be removed from it. But something magical was about to happen. It was just meant to be. The group decided to create something brand new right there on the spot. Now, Brian May brought a heavy riff in D that had been bouncing around in his head for a while. And then John Deacon started playing that killer bass line, you know, the dun 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 dun. Everybody knows it. Vanilla Ice ripped it off. Everybody got excited. It was the best bass line they'd ever heard, all of them. But after a dinner break, it turns out that Deacon completely forgot the riff he just created. Said Roger Taylor, and I quote, "It completely escaped his mind. We got back, and miraculously, I remembered it." Although honestly, different band members have different stories about, who really remembered that bass line. But the 24-hour recording session that followed was unlike anything any of them had ever experienced before. David Bowie pushed for an avant-garde approach, having each musician go into separate vocal booths to improvise without seeing each other or hearing what they were doing. The plan was to vocalize the first thing that just came into their mind. Now, Freddie Mercury contributed a wordless scatting, a bunch of gibberish that ended up on the finished song. David Bowie belted out full sentences. He just made them up. The collision of these separate recordings created that raw, urgent energy that makes Under Pressure so powerful, so enigmatic. The track was originally titled People on the Streets, and it shot straight to #1 in the UK when it dropped in late 81. But in the United States, it topped out at number 29. It didn't make a difference at all. But it would go down in history as one of the greatest tracks in both David Bowie and Queen's catalogs, but it would take a long time. The song's message about compassion and human connection has only grown more relevant over time, though. And that unforgettable bass line, it was almost forgotten, if you can believe that. It's been recognized, borrowed, and celebrated for decades, locking in Under Pressure as a timeless collaboration between two of rock's greatest forces. What a duet.
Under pressure.
All right, this is it, the #1 song that stood the test of time from Casey's American Top 40 Countdown from the same week in 1982. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to hear that Don't Stop Believin' by Journey is the song.
Don't stop believing.
The song has become a multi-generational anthem, inspiring people not to give up, resonating with fans all over the world. But back in 1982, it only peaked at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. And on this same week, it was at number 18. Since then, it's become one of the biggest songs from the decade. Currently boasts over 5 billion streams, though some say it's even more than that. In fact, it's been crowned the biggest rock song in history, and it wasn't even the biggest hit on Journey's own album. Who's Crying Now and Open Arms both charted higher. Don't Stop Believin' is entirely unique in its song structure, led by Jonathan Cain's iconic piano intro. And of course, it features that guitar solo early on, and the chorus only appears in the last 40 seconds of the song. Very unconventional. Record executives were worried. This is what guitarist Neal Schon told me about the song.
A lot of people were scared to death of it, that it had a big break with the train guitar. They're like, the vocals are going away that long?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm scared, maybe we should chop it out. I have to really give, our manager at that time credit for Herbie Herbert. In our contract with CBS back then, we had full control, artistic control of everything. They never heard one little bit of a song until the album was completely done. Sequenced, done, artwork, everything. Here it is. They didn't like it. It was like tough shit. We love it, and it's staying.
Yeah. After Don't Stop Believin's initial release, the song experienced a massive resurgence thanks to its use in The Sopranos and the finale there, and of course Glee, and so many more.
Try and remember the times that were good.
I did?
Yeah.
All right, that is it. The top 10 songs that stood the test of time from January of 82 this same week. Were you surprised by any of the entries? For the record, the original top 10 back included a few more songs that didn't make the cut. Here are the contenders as they stood over half a century ago. In at number 10, Lindsey Buckingham with Trouble. At number 9, it was Turn Your Love Around by George Benson.
Turn your love around.
Jay Giles' band came in at number 8 with Centerfold. Number 7 was Leather and Lace by Stevie Nicks and Don Henley. Number 6 was Quarter Flash with Hard in My Heart. And number 5, Young Turks by Rod Stewart. Number 4, Daryl Hall and John Oates, I Can't Go For That. And number 3, Let's Groove by Earth, Wind & Fire. Number 2, Foreigner with Waiting for a Girl Like You. And of course at number 1, Physical by Olivia Newton-John. Much different now. So that actually means 4 former top 10 hits from this week. It missed the countdown, didn't stand the test of time. What do you think of Test of Time? Is it a great countdown? Should we continue to do it? I want to honor Casey Kasem every Saturday. We've got to do some kind of a top 40 countdown, top 10. Let me know below if you like this format. If you don't, we'll go and do a different format. But it's great to honor Casey and his legacy. Let's have a great discussion about your memories around these songs. And until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.